I'm 75 now, and I can't remember anybody except the Queen bee.
The decision arrived without ceremony, warning, or room for negotiation. Prince William had reviewed the final page of a private financial audit, closed the folder, and issued an order that stunned the royal household. Queen Camilla's office budget was to be terminated immediately. Staff members stopped speaking. Senior courtiers exchanged terrified glances. And behind one firmly closed palace door, Camilla realized that the future king had not merely questioned her spending. He had stripped away her power. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. William received the completed report before sunrise inside his Windsor office, with only his financial advisor and a senior household secretary beside him. A private financial audit meant an independent examination of spending, approvals, and hidden risks, and this one had gone beyond bookkeeping mistakes. The prince read every page in silence. His face remained controlled, yet one hand stayed pressed against the final sheet as the findings settled over him. The report exposed unexplained hospitality charges, private staffing arrangements, luxury office renovations, and payments routed through accounts that had escaped palace scrutiny. William did not accuse Camilla of stealing. He feared something more damaging: a royal office where large sums could move without clear permission, proper records, or meaningful accountability. That mattered because the monarchy demanded trust from the public, and trust could collapse faster than any palace statement could repair it. William placed his pen beside the unsigned response prepared by palace lawyers. He looked toward the officials waiting across from him and spoke without anger. No delay, no compromise. End the budget today. The order terminated Camilla's independent office funding, froze every discretionary payment attached to her household, and forced all future expenses through a central royal finance committee, a group created to approve and track major spending. Camilla received the decision while preparing for an official engagement. Her private secretary entered with a sealed notice and struggled to meet her eyes. The queen consort removed her glasses, asked him to repeat the words, and listened as he explained that her staff no longer controlled their spending. She dismissed everyone from the room. Only then did the silence become unbearable. Across the palace, employees began receiving notices that their authority had ended. One senior aide, shaken but loyal, warned that Camilla would not accept the humiliation quietly. She intended to confront William herself before Charles could step between them. But before the Queen could fight the order, she needed to understand why the prince had chosen this moment, and why the people closest to him were no longer willing to protect her. For William, the audit was about discipline, duty, and the survival of public trust. For Camilla, it was something far more personal. Her office was not simply a collection of salaries and expense accounts. It was the fortress she had built after decades of scrutiny, rejection, and hard-won acceptance. Now the man destined to inherit the crown had placed his hand on its foundations. And standing between them was Charles, a husband, a father, and a king being forced to choose. William believed every unexplained payment carried a danger far greater than its value. One careless expense could become proof that the monarchy protected privilege instead of service. The prince knew the crown, the institution representing the sovereign and the royal family's public duty, could survive criticism, but it could not survive the belief that rules applied only to ordinary people. That was why the softened warnings angered him so deeply. Camilla saw the same decision through a different wound. Her independent household had become evidence that she was no longer an outsider standing beside Charles. The queen consort had spent years enduring hostility, judgment, and uncertainty before gaining a permanent role within royal life. Losing control of her office budget did not feel like an administrative correction. To her, it felt like the first step toward losing influence, loyal staff, and finally the place she had fought to secure. William felt betrayed by the system around his father. Junior finance officials had raised concerns, yet those warnings had been rewritten before reaching the king. Serious irregularities became harmless mistakes. Repeated questions became routine confusion. The future king only discovered the full scale of the problem after demanding an external audit, an independent review conducted by experts outside the normal palace chain of command. Catherine had quietly supported that decision. She told William during a private conversation that several charitable projects linked to both their offices had been charged for services they had never requested. The princess did not accuse Camilla directly, but she urged her husband to follow the money before someone else exposed it first. Her calm warning gave him the resolve he needed. Charles received the termination order alone. He read the line carrying William's authorization, stopped, and slowly placed the document on his desk. The king did not call his wife. He did not summon his son. Silence became his only defense. Yet that silence protected no one. Charles had already seen an earlier summary, carefully reduced to hide the seriousness of the findings. Now he asked for the complete audit, and William sent it without commentary. The final appendix contained one discovery, capable of turning a financial dispute into a family crisis. And it began with one palace evening no one had forgotten. Every royal rupture has a moment that seems insignificant, until the truth is finally exposed. In this case, it began during a private Windsor reception 6 months earlier. The music was soft, the guest list was controlled, and nothing appeared out of place until William overheard a contractor thanking Camilla's senior aide for approving an expensive refurbishment that the prince had never seen listed in the household accounts. One sentence changed the atmosphere. One uncomfortable pause convinced him that someone was hiding far more. William had entered the reception already carrying doubts. The event had been arranged to thank supporters of several royal charities, bringing together trustees, contractors, household staff, and senior family members. A trustee is someone trusted to help oversee an organization's money and decisions. And many of those present had been warned that public programs needed to reduce costs. Yet royal offices continued spending more. To the prince, that contradiction was becoming impossible to ignore. The turning point came quietly. A luxury interiors contractor approached Camilla's chief aide and thanked him for approving a private office refurbishment worth hundreds of thousands of pounds. William stopped walking. He turned back and asked, "Exactly how much did her office authorize?" The aide immediately lowered his eyes. Camilla's senior official hesitated before saying the arrangement had been handled separately through the Queen Consort's office. The prince heard the fear beneath the answer. Separate from what? Separate from whose approval? William knew the Central Household Committee, the group responsible for reviewing major royal expenses, had never seen such a project. That meant either the cost had been hidden or the normal system had been deliberately avoided. Camilla approached moments later and sensed the tension. She told William that decorating decisions inside her household did not require his supervision. The Queen Consort spoke with calm authority, but her dismissal cut deeper than anger. The future king did not argue. He simply looked at the aide again, and that silence became a promise. William began tracing the payments in private. He discovered that the refurbishment had been divided across several smaller invoices, keeping each amount below the level that would trigger an automatic senior review. Then the pattern widened. Other payments led to private events, external consultants, and staff benefits described as charitable outreach. The discovery changed everything. Poor bookkeeping could be corrected. A system designed to disguise spending suggested intention. For 6 months, William examined every trail without warning Camilla. Then he entered a private meeting, carrying the completed report. The Queen arrived determined to force him to withdraw the order before Charles read its most damaging pages. That unanswered question from Windsor had finally brought them face to face, where neither title nor marriage could soften what came next. There were no cameras, no secretaries, and no carefully prepared palace statements, when Camilla entered William's private sitting room. She came expecting an argument over procedure. What she encountered was a decision already made. The prince remained standing, as she demanded the restoration of her budget, accusing him of using financial discipline to weaken her position beside Charles. William did not raise his voice. That restraint made his answer more devastating. He told her the money was finished because the trust was finished first. Camilla had requested the meeting within minutes of learning that her finance team had lost access to the accounts used for travel, staffing, hospitality, and private office projects. The Queen Consort understood exactly what that meant. A discretionary budget is money an office can control for selected expenses without seeking approval each time, and losing it left her household unable to act independently. To her, the freeze was not temporary pressure. It was a direct strike against her authority. William had agreed to meet on one condition: no aides. The prince wanted every word to belong to them, leaving neither household able to blame advisors afterward. Camilla accused him of treating her like a temporary guest rather than the king's wife. She warned that her office could not function if every journey, reception, or staff decision required permission from a committee controlled by others. William listened without interruption. Then he told her that rank did not create immunity. The future king said the crown could not demand restraint from the public, while royal households avoided the same discipline. That mattered because every hidden payment weakened the monarchy's claim to service, and every excuse made the institution appear more interested in protecting itself than correcting failure. Camilla's anger cracked into something more defensive. She admitted that she knew some costs had been divided between different accounts, but insisted her advisors had described the method as normal and permitted. The Queen argued that similar practices existed across royal departments, and that she had trusted experienced officials to follow the rules. William opened the report and pointed to several exceptional payments carrying her handwritten initials. The prince explained that those approvals made it impossible for her to separate herself completely from the spending. Camilla pushed her chair backward and stood. She asked whether he intended to reduce her to seeking permission for every journey. He remained motionless. Until every account is clean, yes. Outside the room, Charles had arrived without warning. The king stopped before entering and heard William accuse his household of protecting Camilla from consequences. That single sentence changed the crisis again. Their confrontation had exposed the anger between them, but the true struggle was only beginning, because the budget could not remain frozen without the authority of the crown itself. Charles had spent years trying to prevent the wounds inside his family from becoming threats to the monarchy. Now that effort had collapsed in a single afternoon. His wife expected protection. His son expected accountability. Both believed the king's response would reveal where his deepest loyalty truly rested. But as Charles examined the report, he understood that defending Camilla would not simply challenge William. It would place his own judgment, household, and authority under the same unforgiving light. Charles still held the sovereign authority to reverse or change the freeze. Sovereign authority meant the final power exercised by the reigning monarch over official royal household decisions. William had acted through future planning structures, linked to his growing responsibilities. But the king could still stop him. That power should have made the choice easier. Instead, it made every consequence his alone. Senior courtiers warned Charles that restoring Camilla's budget without answering the audit could trigger anger inside the palace. Younger staff had already accepted strict limits on travel, staffing, and public programs. The king knew that asking them to sacrifice while protecting one powerful office would destroy morale. Worse, it would confirm William's belief that the household valued rank more than responsibility. Charles still felt fiercely protective of Camilla. He remembered how long she had fought to build a respected role beside him, and how quickly critics would turn financial failure into personal disgrace. The monarch feared that one decision could erase years of service in the public mind. Yet he also felt wounded by William's silence. His son had acted before speaking to him, leaving the king to discover the full judgment after the order was already moving through the palace. William's fear was harder to dismiss. The audit showed that officials had repeatedly redirected warnings away from Charles's desk. They believed shielding Camilla also meant protecting the monarch from conflict inside his marriage. Serious concerns were softened. Direct questions were delayed. Each small act of protection had built a wall around the truth. Charles reached the most damaging section and stopped. One trusted advisor had removed several pages from an earlier briefing, including evidence that office funds supported private guests and events, with no official royal purpose. The king circled the paragraph, lifted the telephone, and called his private secretary. "Bring him to me." No one else enters the room. Charles set the receiver down, but the crisis was already spreading beyond that meeting. Before the advisor arrived, dozens of Camilla's employees received revised contracts. Some faced reduced duties, others faced dismissal. While the king searched for the person who had concealed the truth, her household began breaking apart under the force of a decision that had already moved beyond numbers. By the following morning, the consequences were no longer confined to a confidential report. Travel arrangements were cancelled. Consultants were informed that their contracts were suspended. Staff members who had served Camilla for years were told that their roles would be reviewed. Inside her office, telephones rang without answer, as stunned employees carried boxes from rooms they had believed were secure. Camilla watched the machinery of her royal life slow to a halt and understood that William's order had been designed to take effect before resistance could form. Camilla's basic security and official constitutional duties remained protected, but that distinction meant little to the people around her. Discretionary office operations were the flexible expenses that kept daily royal work moving, including regional visits, private receptions, wardrobe support, communications advice, and hospitality. Now every planned cost required fresh approval. The Queen Consort still held her title, yet her household could no longer act with the independence it had relied upon for years. Her longtime private secretary entered carrying a list of staff reviews. He struggled to keep his voice steady as he explained that several junior employees could lose their jobs, even though none had approved the questioned payments. Camilla listened in silence. The aide had served her through difficult years, and she could see the shame in his face as he delivered news he had never expected to give. The Queen Consort felt anger first. She believed William had moved too quickly and too harshly, striking the entire office before responsibility had been fully assigned. Then guilt followed. Camilla knew those employees had trusted her household to protect them from sudden instability. Now innocent staff members were paying for failures they had not created. A departing finance assistant left one item behind. The duplicated ledger contained descriptions that did not match the records given to the private auditor. A ledger is the detailed account used to track money entering and leaving an office, and these differences were impossible to dismiss. Private hospitality had been renamed as outreach. Renovation costs had been described as maintenance support. The altered entries changed the meaning of the crisis. Poor oversight could explain confusion. Rewriting descriptions after the investigation had begun suggested deliberate concealment. Someone had tried to make the spending appear safer than it was. Camilla sat alone after her secretary left. She removed the nameplate from the empty chair beside her, held it for several seconds, and placed it inside a drawer. Then she sent a private message, asking Charles to meet her without aides that evening. The Queen no longer wanted him to defeat William. She wanted to tell her husband who had ordered the ledger changes. The loss of her office had forced her to abandon defiance and speak honestly, and the person waiting behind the next closed door was not the prince. It was the king. That evening, Camilla entered Charles's private rooms without an aide, a prepared statement, or the confidence she had carried into her confrontation with William. The king was waiting beside the fireplace. The audit closed on the table between them. For several seconds neither spoke. Then she admitted what pride had prevented her from saying earlier. She had allowed her office to become too independent, trusted the wrong people, and approved expenses she had not examined carefully enough. But she denied ordering the deception. Charles had insisted that no secretaries attend. The king wanted no official buffer, no carefully chosen language, and no advisor waiting to soften the truth afterward. A royal household is the staff and office structure that supports a senior member of the family, and both households had used that structure to avoid painful conversations. Now there was nowhere left to hide. Charles asked about the handwritten approvals, the fragmented invoices, and the private events funded through accounts carrying charitable descriptions. Camilla did not defend every decision. The queen consort admitted that she had signed several exceptional payments after her chief aide warned that delays would embarrass important guests, damage engagements, and make her appear incapable of managing her office. Camilla said she had trusted people who understood the system better than she did. She believed they were protecting her work. Instead, they had protected the spending. The admission hurt, because her greatest fear had always been appearing unworthy of the position beside Charles, and that fear had made her easier to pressure. Charles listened, but his sympathy did not become rescue. The monarch told her that his first instinct was still to defend her. Yet every time he protected Camilla from scrutiny, he risked proving William's deepest fear, that personal loyalty mattered more than the crown. The queen consort then named her chief financial administrator. She said he had ordered staff to rewrite ledger descriptions after the audit began, claiming the changes were needed to standardize the records. Camilla supported the accusation with a private written message in which he warned that the original entries could cause political damage. The message showed that he understood exactly why the descriptions mattered. Camilla reached toward the audit but stopped before touching it. Charles covered the report with his hand. "I believe you did not design this. I cannot pretend you allowed none of it." Before sunrise, the king made his decision. William's freeze would remain. The administrator would be removed. Camilla would address her staff herself before the palace spoke publicly. The verdict ended their private argument. But by morning, the decision had escaped the palace, and the country was preparing to judge all three of them. At dawn, the private financial battle became a national spectacle. Broadcasters abandoned their planned schedules. Commentators debated whether William had protected the monarchy or humiliated the king's wife. Outside Buckingham Palace, tourists stood beside journalists reading updates from their phones. Yet one image captured the mood more powerfully than every argument. A newspaper front page showing William walking alone beneath the headline, "The heir closes the Queen's account." The monarchy's family conflict had become a public test of trust. Buckingham Palace confirmed that Camilla's discretionary office budget had been suspended after an independent audit. A discretionary budget is money an office can spend on selected needs without seeking approval for every individual cost. From that morning onward, her future expenses would pass through a centralized system, meaning one shared financial structure would review and approve spending before money moved. The official statement avoided accusing Camilla of criminal behavior. Instead, it blamed weak administration, incomplete oversight, and failures inside the office responsible for tracking expenses. The Queen Consort remained beside Charles, but the language made one point painfully clear. The old system had lost the palace's confidence, and it would not return. William's supporters praised him for applying strict standards inside his own family. They argued that the prince had protected the crown by acting before the scandal became impossible to contain. Camilla's defenders saw cruelty. They said he had weakened the dignity of the king's wife and allowed an internal accounting failure to become a public humiliation. Charles watched the coverage without comment. The king understood the trap around him. Any visible anger toward William could make him appear hostile to transparency. Any strong defense of the decision could look like abandonment of Camilla. Silence protected his position, but it deepened the pain inside his marriage. Palace officials then announced that the administrator connected to the altered ledger had been dismissed. Every questioned payment would face another review. Outside Buckingham Palace, one woman placed a handwritten card against the railings reading, "No one should stand above the accounts." Nearby, another visitor removed flowers intended for Camilla and quietly walked away. Camilla refused to disappear. She attended a scheduled charity engagement without her usual office entourage. A young volunteer thanked her for coming despite the controversy. The Queen gripped the woman's hand, briefly lost her composure, and replied, "Today, being here matters more than being comfortable." That evening, William received a summons to meet Charles and Camilla together. The public had delivered its judgment on accountability, but the final emotional verdict belonged to the three people who had survived the crisis behind palace walls. The final meeting contained none of the fury that had defined the days before it. William sat opposite Charles and Camilla as three members of one family confronted what the institution had demanded from each of them. The prince had won the financial battle, but victory brought no satisfaction. The queen consort had lost her independent budget, yet not her place beside the king. And Charles understood that preserving both his marriage and the monarchy required him to stop confusing protection with silence. Charles spoke first. The king confirmed that William's termination of Camilla's discretionary office budget would stand permanently, not remain a temporary emergency measure. A discretionary budget meant money an office could control for selected expenses without seeking approval each time. That independence was now over. The monarch made clear that the old system had failed, and restoring it would only invite another crisis. Camilla would keep a smaller official office, but every important expense would pass through centralized financial controls. Quarterly independent reviews would examine the accounts every 3 months, while strict limits would govern staffing, travel, hospitality, and private projects. The queen consort would continue her public duties, but her household would no longer operate beyond the reach of shared oversight. William then turned toward Camilla. The prince told her the decision had never been designed to erase her work, humiliate her marriage, or remove her from royal life. He refused, however, to apologize for acting when the existing system had failed. The future king believed silence would have protected appearances for a few weeks, while damaging the crown for years. Camilla listened without interrupting. She admitted that years of defending her right to belong had made her view scrutiny as hostility. The queen consort had mistaken questions for attacks and control for protection. That fear allowed poor decisions to survive around her, even when she had not created them herself. Charles accepted his own share of responsibility. The monarch admitted that he had allowed advisors to shield him from uncomfortable information. He dismissed the senior officials who had blocked financial warnings from reaching his desk, and promised that no household would again be protected through silence. Camilla agreed to address her remaining staff through a recorded internal statement. She would acknowledge the management failures, surrender direct control over exceptional payments, and continue her duties rather than retreat from them. Charles signed the new financial order, placed the pen at the center of the table, and said, "This family cannot ask the country for trust while fearing the truth inside its own walls." William extended his hand. Camilla paused, then took it. The gesture was not surrender. It was acceptance. The budget was permanently ended. The hidden system was dismantled. The family was altered but intact. William left, knowing he had protected the crown at a personal cost. Camilla remained beside Charles, chastened but not destroyed. And the monarchy carried one final lesson into its future. Loyalty may preserve relationships, but only accountability can preserve the institution. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.